the new Unearthed Arcana just came out, and I've read it all. Here are 3 build ideas you should definitely use in your playtesting, with interesting concepts and backstories to boot. Remember, these 3 builds use playtest material for their very identity, so make sure everyone's okay with that before you bring them to the table. Oh, and make sure you stick around till the last build to figure out how to become your own patron in 1D&D. Our first build is going to be a Grung. Of course it is. Look at the channel. If you want more tips on how to play a Grung and what they do, click right there. This Grung is going to be a fighter, making full use of the new weapon masteries and their poisonous skin to get 3 attacks a turn, each with a +2 to damage, and each with a chance to poison their foes. Oh, and by level 4, at least one of those attacks will always be at advantage. How? Let's break it down. First, we're going to be throwing daggers and later darts to achieve our goals, making full use of the dueling fighting style, which gives you a +2 to damage when wielding one weapon in one hand and no weapons in another hand. Now, how are we going to build a character based around throwing who only has one weapon in a hand at a time? Well, the thrown property in the new playtest material allows you to draw a weapon as part of the attack, meaning you never have to worry about running out of weapons or hands. As per the new playtest's version of the thrown property, it definitely doesn't matter whether we build with dexterity or with strength. Both can be used on finesse weapons that are thrown. But one benefit of this thrown property, being able to draw your weapons as part of the attack, means that you're always going to have a hand free at the end of the turn, which is pretty useful to have if you're, say, trying to open a door. First thing we're going to do in combat is throw a dagger that we draw from our belt. Because this is the only weapon in our hands, and we've literally just drawn it, we get a +2 to our damage. If this attack hits, of course. And because of the Grung's racial ability, which enables you to coat your weapon in your own poison as part of drawing that weapon, we've now applied a DC 12 2d4 poison damage, potentially, to this attack as well. Now we're going to be using this free draw and poison quite a bit in this build, so make sure you have the mechanics on that exactly down and inform your dungeon master each time until he tells you to stop because you're getting very annoying. And in any case, because of the new Nick weapon mastery, we're a fighter, we get weapon masteries as pretty much a basic level 1 ability, we are able to make a second attack without using our bonus action, using a different weapon. Well, we can't use the same weapon, we've thrown it at someone. So we draw another dagger, poison it, and send it flying their way. Again, this is the only weapon in our hands, so we get +2 to damage on this particular attack, and again, a DC 12 save or a lot of poison damage. See, this doesn't use up our bonus action because of the Nick property, giving us simply another attack at level 1. This leaves our bonus action completely free for second wind or literally anything else we want to try, especially useful if your DM allows drinking a potion as a bonus action. But I promised 3 attacks, not 2 attacks and an entirely free bonus action to do whatever you'd like. But at level 3, which is incidentally where I begin all of my games as a dungeon master, we can pick up our subclass, Battlemaster, assuming nothing changes of course. But for the time being, we can use the quick toss maneuver, which allows us to make another attack using a superiority dice as a bonus action. Again, we are drawing our weapon, we are poisoning our weapon in the same flourish. And it's of course the only weapon in our hand, so you're starting to get the picture. This time, however, the attack benefits from extra damage in terms of your D8 superiority dice. Pretty nice. But I promised you advantage on one of those attacks. Well, at level 4, we're going to take the new and improved Dual Wielder feat from the second playtest, which helps make the dart a light weapon for the purposes of our additional attack. It also lets us draw 2 weapons at a time, which is cool, but we don't necessarily want to sacrifice that +2 in damage we get from dueling. Why the dart? Well, it has the Vex weapon mastery, which I consider to be one of the more powerful ones in the game. What this does is, if you hit and deal damage, which is an unnecessary addition to the wording, you get to have advantage on your next attack before the end of your next turn. Well, if you're following along, we're going to replace the second of our attacks with a dart attack. Nick to give us that additional attack, throwing the dart to give us that Vex attack, and the Vex attack gives us advantage on our final bonus action Superiority Quick Toss, increasing the chances of hitting a natural 20, which would increase the chances of doubling that all-important superiority dice. And of course, we can't forget about any potential poison damage. So, if all of these attacks hit without crits, we're looking at 3d4 plus 6 plus 3 times your dexterity or strength modifier plus 1d8. And assuming your enemy can't succeed a DC 12 con save every time they're hit, well, they're going to be taking 2d4 per time the poison activates. Oh, and by the way, you can use a shield and heavy armor if you go for the strength version of this build with pretty much no downside, except, of course, disadvantage on stealth checks. So you're throwing daggers at people while being virtually untouchable yourself. Enjoy. I would play this Grung as having once been an exhibit at a carnival, in a freak show perhaps. Separated from his tribe and shunned by all of the other freaks even because of their deadly poisonous skin, this individual has had a very lonely existence. He's learned the hard way that kindness is rare. Nevertheless, one individual in the carnival took pity on him, the knife thrower, communicating with him where no one else would, and teaching this Grung the skills of his trade. Yes, this Grung has learned how to just narrowly miss a willing participant in the most exciting way with a thrown knife. But perhaps over the course of their daring escape from the carnival, or perhaps by being left aside as interest waned in this strange frog creature, they've learned that their weapons can be more effectively used if aimed at the central mass of an individual. This skilled Grung now roams the lands, trusting in their quick hands and accurate fingers. I've had a concept in my mind for quite some time of a wizard that was once promised that a wizard can do everything anyone else can do better, that learning about the weave was the ultimate path to power. Yet when she looked to the world and saw the resilience that even unwashed barbarians were capable of, or had her first spell in an adventure counterspelled by a subtle spelling sorcerer that she couldn't even get back with a counterspell of her own, became jaded and disillusioned with this position. Now, after immersing herself in years of spell research, she has emerged, deciding now is the time to prove once and for all that wizards can really stand up to these crazy feats of everyone else, and prove that anything they can do, she can do better. Now she seeks to alter spells and abilities to try and create something that is adjacent to the unique powers of other classes and individuals, trying to bend these strange unknown powers to herself and her own study. This is why I was so excited to see the new direction of wizards in this new playtest material. Being able to modify and eventually create spells at 9th level is a godsend to any wizard who has been jealously looking at the creative things that other classes can do. With this single set of class feature spells, a wizard can now reasonably cast subtle spelled dissonant whispers or counterspell, can maintain concentration even better than a high level monk or warcaster, can blast people with magic from far further away than a warlock, can blast people from even further away than a warlock can, and casts more rituals in a day than a cleric with a day job. Seriously, these spells in their current form are kind of busted. They allow you to use darkness, one of the most powerful area denial spells in the game, without any of the disadvantage, allowing all of your allies to see through it, by one interpretation of the rules. Of course, this ambiguous wording will definitely be tightened up by the time of 1D&D's actual official release. But for now, a creative player and a wealthy wizard character, both with respectively some time on their hands, could cook up some of the wildest combinations seen in Dungeons & Dragons for quite some time. Even if you're not all in on the theming of jealous wizard trying to do what everyone else can, a wealthy, research-focused wizard can get stuff done. I mean, there is a balance reason why spells above 3rd level are almost never rituals. Because it should probably cost you a spell slot to cast a 7th level spell like Mirage Arcane, right? So here's some examples of our wizard finding solutions to become like other classes. A blade singing, spell slinging wizard can absolutely pretty well emulate a Hexblade Warlock, especially if our darkness trick works out. And they're hasted. And an Order of the Scribes wizard can easily duplicate the intense magical learnings of the Knowledge Cleric, especially considering the wizard's new level 2 academic feature, and their ability to remove components from their divination spells, essentially repackaging them as innate abilities granted to them by the gods. Heck, an Abjuration wizard sporting the newly available Armour of Agathis alongside Shield and Mirror Image can practically wade into combat like a monk, parrying blows left and right, and just start beating things up with their wizard staff, and can use their still available concentration slot to cast haste on themselves. But, of course, this is haste modified, so that it cannot be interrupted simply by the wizard taking damage, which they almost certainly won't be with all of those buffs stacked upon them. In all honesty, these new options for the wizard are probably slightly overtuned, and probably won't be sticking around in their entirety for 1D&D as a release. But the concept of a wizard whose entire ultimate goal is not to become the most powerful mage of all time, but to prove that wizards can do anything anyone else can do, is a very fun way to nerf yourself. Just that little bit. And also a fun way to have a character who's got quite a bit to prove, and a very good reason for adventuring and tinkering with their modifications and spells in the field. But if anyone ever figures out how to replicate Hurl Through Hell through these features, please let me know. For research purposes. Now, the Warlock has seen a bunch of changes in this playtest. It looks to be something of a half-caster plus, with that plus being you have the ability to use up all of your invocation slots to get one spell at a time to round out your higher level spellcasting. Second, the class has been streamlined significantly to make the difference between pacts and invocations a little more clear cut. But this is not what we're interested in today. This build is a weird one. Have you ever wanted to play the man in the chair? Well, that concept has just found its most potent new tool. The new, updated Gaze of Two Minds is utterly insane, and it's time someone said something. See, This invocation, available at level 5, allows you to touch a willing creature and perceive through its senses as long as you keep using your bonus action each turn to refresh it. So far so good, right? Well, here's the kicker. You can cast spells using that individual's space across the entire plane of existence. Here's how the character works. You're a warlock who can't stand getting their hands dirty. You charm a witless humanoid, or your familiar if you're Pact of the Chain, into agreeing to help you, agreeing to a bargain, perhaps. You will give them aid through your potent spellcasting, as long as they promise to be your eyes and ears, and come to a secluded place outside the campsite to meet up with you every morning after you've both had a nap. This, of course, is to re-establish the gaze of two minds. From a player perspective, your PC would be someone like Johnny Appleblossom, a farmer who's out on an adventure with a commoner stat block, or perhaps slightly more hit points if your DM's feeling very generous. Yet, inexplicably, Johnny has eldritch power creeping and leeching out of him whenever combat is initiated, despite seeming completely oblivious to it, and seeming certainly not to have any spellcasting chops of his own. Indeed, Johnny Appleblossom is just making regular attacks with his pitchfork, trying to help out as best he can, while all this eldritch horror erupts from around him. Perhaps the party start getting suspicious as to why Johnny always leaves camp very early before the break of dawn, or how he has such magical power with seemingly no clue as to how any of it's happening. Indeed, perhaps when Johnny Appleblossom sadly perishes, overwhelmed in his minute pool of hit points by a horde of enemies, perhaps the party is more confused to find another farmer joining their expedition the day later, as they welcome James Nectarine into their party. This is not only an excellent way to have your party second guessing every seemingly innocent NPC in the world, as well as a way to essentially become your own patron, it's also an excellent meta joke about the transitive nature of characters in old school D&D gaming, while also making your party a little more concerned and therefore attentive to the needs of their travelling henchmen and companions. After all, when the adoptive goblin NPC turns up one morning after a tragic death of James Nectarine, displaying the same eldritch power, your party is going to worry and do anything they can to protect their favourite little goblin. They will attempt to get to the bottom of this murder mystery before the goblin meets the same horrific fate. Of course, there's some problems with this concept. It requires your true PC to remain hidden in the shadows, trailing the party at every step, while also being close enough to meet up with their thrall to re-establish the gaze of two minds. It can also have the effect of weirdly splitting up turns between the thrall and the true overseer, which I would solve by just treating the thrall as a familiar in terms of initiative count. It also mechanically requires a character to use their bonus action strictly every 6 seconds, which can get tiring, but can be hand-waved away as they're concentrating very hard. And, of course, it completely breaks the moment extra-dimensional travel gets involved. But all this jeopardy is kind of part of the fun. In the right game, with the right party, this concept can be absolute gold dust, and will at least be a very intriguing mystery side quest, all on its own. So, There are 3 new character and role-playing possibilities enabled by this brand new playtest material. I'd be very, very interested to hear if you've tried any of these builds out. Let me know in the comments. And let me know any other crazy things you've thought up to do with this content, because it's got my mind whirring. Now, I know the Warlock and Wizard are kind of bare bones concepts, and even the Grung doesn't have ability scores tied to everything. It's not a full character build, but I don't want to rob you of all of the fun of making these awesome characters. Personally, this playtest in particular feels like a grab bag of some really, really awesome stuff. Some of which is probably a little overtuned. But I would urge people to actually try and playtest the ideas on offer here, instead of just reacting in a kind of knee-jerk fashion. I actually expect weapon masteries will have a much bigger impact than how they read on how people play at the table. And it would be a shame for player feedback from non-playtesters to colour or alter the interesting stuff that is genuinely there. So don't write weapon masteries off too soon. Now, I'd urge you, if you've made it this far, you've probably enjoyed the video or fallen asleep. But if you have enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. It's really important to me, and it's one of my goals this year to try and build this channel out as big as I can, to build a community on here who are interested in the same stuff I am. With that said, I've been Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master, and I'll see you in the next video. Click here for a playlist, or here for something I think you'll like.